All right, we're going live here at Red Zone in Athens. Everybody's piling in as we get ready for G Day. And, our buddies here at Red Zone have always been very friendly, and we're going to talk about the Dogs today. So we're downtown on Clayton Street, and we've got a lot of folks coming in already. And it's going to be I think there's a lot of excitement about G Day as we get ready for probably about an hour and a half for Georgia tomorrow, maybe two. It kind of depends on because this is not going to be a traditional scrimmage. I don't think necessarily. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Um, as Georgia comes into the 2025 season, not that far away, opening up with Marshall and then taking it from there. So, what are you looking for this on Saturday? There's a lot to see. I think you've got the quarterbacks, you've got the receivers, specifically both those. You got some change there from quarterback in 25 to 20, 24 to 25. And then at receiver, Zachariah Brandt's going to play. I don't know the answer to that. We're going to see from Noah Thomas. There's a lot of stuff. One thing that Ryan Curley wrote about were the five for Friday. Let me put it on the screen real quick as we go. Let's talk about this real quick. Will the offense look crisp? It's a good question from Ryan. Let's get back to that in a second here. I think it's probably the biggest question mark for me coming into G Day. What will the offense look like? And obviously that we don't know the answer to that yet. And if you see Gunner and Ryan Puglisi, these receivers, one challenge is we don't know what the offensive line will look like for Georgia on Saturday because there's been so many injuries with Drew Bobo, uh, Monroe Freeling. I mean, is Ernest Green good to go? So there's been a lot of transition on the offensive line for Georgia um, in terms of health. So that's another thing. So will the offense look crisp? Here's what Ryan writes. He says Georgia's offense was the opposite of crisp a season ago. It was consistently inconsistent. The Dogs would look like a top offense one game and then bad the next. Sometimes they would display both sides of the coin in individual games. I think the only time I can recall Georgia really being very what I would call good on offense was against kind of Tennessee and second half against Alabama, where they just the final 35 minutes against Alabama, where they just sort of exploded in a way. That was a very good showing in both cases. They had to really struggle in the Sugar Bowl. They had plenty of struggle in the SEC championship game. So I have no reason to think that the defense won't be good in 2025 because it's always good. But I think what you'd like to see is some explosion from the offense. Some explosion from the offense. Here's a second question that Ryan talks about. We this may be a little bit easier to judge. He says, "Who will step up on the defensive line?" He goes on to say, "Does Georgia have a dude or dudes there? They've had in the last few years: Jalen Walker, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. Is there one this season? Jordan Hall was a big time recruit, but injuries have held him back. True freshman Elijah Griffin has all sorts of hype around him. So that's a good question. Like, is this defensive line going to be ready to roll? Maybe we'll see that tomorrow. I don't know. But I think that's one critical component for what Georgia's got to do. And the next thing Ryan's talking about here is extremely important for the long term success of this team. Will the run game be fixed? That's a good question. I was talking with somebody for a while today as they were traveling, and this came up. Are these guys gonna be able to run it or not? And there were so many problems last year with the run game. Way too many injuries, generally speaking, to the backs, to the offensive line. Eventually to Carson Beck. I mean, there were a lot of challenges when trying to run the ball a year ago for Georgia, and that has got to be handled uh, by this team and this group. It's really very important. Um, and there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that it will. That's the part that I think is nerve wracking for everybody, at Georgia. Um, I don't know. That's something that they're going to have to fix. So I'm typing something over on Dog Post as we go here, but um, yeah, I mean, I think that's a good critical question. I'm also monitoring the Masters. Monitoring is the big question. Here's what Ryan has to say about that. He said, no back had more than 25 carries outside of Nate Frazier and Trevor Etienne. Branson Robinson, Roger Robinson dealing with injuries still. There's the notion. Hey, listen, you've got Dylan Bell hanging out there too. So there's a lot that of potential, but potential unrealized is really sort of just failure. So let's just see how this goes. Let's see what happens with Bo Walker as well. Oh, I see Ryan has questions. We've got multiple things here. Here's some stuff he says to feel good about. All right. Now, if you're on our newsletter, you're going to be getting this. Okay. Also, you can see got this Junkyard Dogs t-shirt from our buddies over at Red Zone. I'm downtown at Red Zone right now. I know there's not a lot of people watching yet because y'all are coming over from Atlanta. Maybe all of y'all are in Augusta. I'm not sure. This Junkyard Dogs Tribe Blend t-shirt. And I've got some stuff to show y'all as time moves on here. So let's talk a little bit about, quote, things to feel good about. And he's right here. It says the linebackers. Yep, you got that right. They're pretty good. Now, how good? Have they, are we talking the Kobe Dean, Raekwon Smith level? I don't know. But CJ Allen, Raylan Wilson, Chris Cole, Justin Williams, that's a really good group. That's a really good group to start with. And next thing he's talking about here, and I think this is important, college football has changed substantively. And I'm going to talk about what's going on at Tennessee soon. We're going to be here with you for 2 hours. But, Kirby was talking to us. I think this was in middle March. Said, "Hey, look, I've got the best coaching staff in the country." Well, you're going to need it. Everybody's going to need that because college football has changed so much in the last half decade that the turnover on rosters is significant. All these rosters are younger than they used to be, obviously more inexperienced. Here's what Ryan had to say. He said, Georgia should not have gotten as far as it did last year. It won the SEC championship. The staff is about the same, one or two people being on it. And he says, Kirby Stark said multiple times in 24 was the best coaching job he and his staff had done. This team is talented. Don't let anybody talk you out of it. Are they as gifted as 21 and 22? No, they're not. But relative to what's out there in college football, they are quite certainly very talented. There's not a lot of teams that can line up 1 through 85 with these guys and get it going. I mean, Tennessee, as we talked about a minute ago, I fully expect this to get handled, but we'll just see. Um, Tennessee doesn't have the players that Georgia does, but all these programs are going to have to adjust to the new world of college football and how quick you're turning things over. Another thing, well, is the next point that Ryan's making. The rest of the country is dealing with a ton of turnover. Here's Texas with Quinn Ewers, Matthew Golden, and a slew of other players on their offensive line. People are leaving and coming in. Bye, Grandpa. And then at Tennessee, you've got Tennessee right now. You don't know if their starting quarterback's going to be back. So that's problematic. Of course, no, you take it. At Oregon, you're replacing a starting quarterback. Tennessee should not be replacing their starting quarterback. That could be the case. I doubt it. But anyway, Dylan Gabriel and Tez Johnson at Oregon are no longer there. Ohio State, the slew. I mean, basically everybody that mattered last year that wasn't Jeremiah Smith or Isaiah or Caleb Downs, they're all gone. Penn State, look, Penn State's going to be the team that a lot of people are going to point at to talk about, hey, these guys should win it. Well, people are going to say that about Texas too. So, but Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter is probably going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. He's gone from Penn State as well. Look, I think that this is, hey, y'all, how are you? Thanks for coming in. Good to see y'all. Thank you for coming to Red Zone. It's going to be, these are four teams outside of Georgia. I would not include Tennessee in this. I would say essentially it's Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, and Oregon. These are all teams that everybody's going to be interested in. I mean, that's going to be the betting favorite. They're going to be the betting favorites to win the national championship. It's a sort of a quartet cluster at the top. But everybody's in a challenging situation right now, and they're going to have to adjust. And if what Kirby's talking about with his off um, with his staff is true, then they're going to really need them, and they're going to have to execute the way they did a year ago to win the Southeastern Conference Championship and beyond. Here's the third thing that Ryan's talking about. He says, G-Day lock. Who says we can't have locks for G-Day? So these are betting locks, of course. He said, this is such an impossible thing to predict, but he predicts that Noah Thomas, who came in from Texas A&M, is going to have a touchdown. That's his, quote, gut feeling. Gut feeling is what we want to try to avoid in the grand scheme of things, but I do think that it would be a smart bet that a newcomer at receiver would probably score. So we'll just see what he has to say. He's talking about the Masters here, which I will skip. I think right now, if you are looking at the grand scheme of things in collegiate athletics, if you're Georgia, you're completely committed to winning in a very real way. There's a lot of challenges out there on the legal stand front that won't be handled. Uh, that has not yet been handled. So there's a little bit of murkiness right now in college football and collegiate athletics, and that will over time settle down. We do a popular feature each Friday before games, and I did. This is what I wrote about on Final Feelings. I said, "Gee, we'll see a lot of players. The ones I am most curious to see are as follows." And I'm just going to go down the list here. Okay, I'm going to start from the bottom, actually. DeMello Jones, a DB. Look, Georgia's defensive backs were not as steady last year as you would like to see, or we've grown accustomed to. And if Georgia's going to have success in a very real way, they're going to have to figure out those 4 to 5, perhaps 6 spots in the secondary. When you're playing nickel or usually nickel, you're going to have to figure these things out. So DeMello Jones is a good example of that. Can he step up? What will he look like tomorrow? Again, we are live at Red Zone downtown in Athens on Clayton Street. If you don't know where Clayton Street is, it's a street north of Broad. You would walk away from campus. You would walk away from the hedges up north, one block. These are the hedges. You'd walk away from the arches. I don't know why I said hedges. You'd walk north away from there, past the Chick-fil-A, turn left at Mrs. Harry's place, and you will see Red Zone. And it's becoming more and more crowded as time. Of course, baseball is playing today. I will be going to tennis in theory later to watch everything. So it's a very busy weekend. I believe softball is at home. So it's a very busy weekend in Athens. But of course, G-Day being the big day. Another guy we're just curious about now. We don't know everything about these guys. Is Quintavious Johnson. So let me talk about Quintavious for a second, because when I went down to see him play at Mays, well, it was not at Mays. It was at Lakewood, um, or whatever Lakewood is called now. Um, you know, he jumped out to me. I completely understood why Georgia was so interested in signing him. He has outstanding lateral movement. I mean, the kid really did do an excellent job to me of getting to the ball. And we're just going to see how he progresses at Georgia. But Quintavious Johnson is a guy that, just pay attention. We'll see. Thomas Davis was really young one day, too. Nobody knew who David Pollock was. Stars eventually at Georgia come to play. Another one, very possibly, Justin Williams has a lot of people like Justin Williams. There's a lot of reasons to like Justin Williams. And I think if you're looking for the next great linebacker at Georgia, it could be him. But there are so many good linebackers that you're going to have to fight your way onto the field and to go make plays, etc. So Justin Williams is another guy to pay attention to. We went to go see Elijah Griffin in Atlanta when he was coming up from Savannah. Thanks for coming in. They were playing Marist, and I always give my caveat about Marist. When you're playing them, it's not quite the same as playing other schools because of the option and just the style, the way that Marist plays. But this guy is getting a lot of rave reviews from people at Georgia. Now, it's one thing to do it, in in practice and so forth. Let's see what happens when the band plays. So Elijah Griffin from Savannah, let's just see what happens there. Another guy that will stand out for sure, his father and I go way back, is Juan Gaston Jr. Look, this guy, in theory, should be a player for Georgia over time. You know, Juan played at Westlake. His father played at Columbia. Thanks for coming in, y'all. Juan Gaston Sr., strange to say that. Juan played at Columbia. We fought him a lot when I was at Tucker. He was the most gifted person I ever saw play a sport, and I played with NBA basketball players. So Juan was something else. Now his son is at Georgia. The ability is there, but it always takes time when you're talking about offensive linemen. Let's just see what happens with Juan Gaston. Bo Walker is yet another person that Georgia folks have been curious and interested about. It's another running back. You've got Nate Frazier, you've got Dwight Phillips Jr., you've got all these guys I used to play with, and their kids are juniors. It's confusing for me, to be honest with you. But Bo Walker is someone that another DeKalb County kid. If he's as good as people are suggesting, then Georgia's got another good. They're in a good spot at running back again. He moved from Cedar Grove to go to the private school in Northeast Georgia, and so let's just see what happens. But Walker, I'll be paying close attention to him. Elias Williams is the real deal. This is not the first time you've heard that, so it might take a little bit of time. I'm talking about a lot of younger guys here. Quintavious, Elijah Griffin, Juan Gaston, Bo Walker, Elias Williams. These are younger players. They will form the nucleus of Georgia's teams moving forward. They will usher Georgia into the late portion of this decade on the football field. And let's just see how this goes. Elias Williams is an extremely freaky deaky tight end. You will notice him if he catches the ball tomorrow. We're talking about tight ends. So they don't always, they're not always the focal point. Taylor, on the other hand, he has been getting a lot of attention from Kirby. Why? They want him to go ball out. And it is hard. It is very challenging to go from being a senior in high school to a freshman in college. Okay. I can say that from experience, and this is just in basketball. Start talking about football, and there's different layers to things and so forth. We probably only had 35 sets, and we maybe used 6 of them. Maybe it's more than that. It's probably 10. I would get confused, and I would not say that I'm a lower end of academic achievement. So it can be confusing. These guys are not just going to have to process all that information. They're also going to have to get used to playing at the speed that they need to play in this league and beyond. No one is keeping score. Well, they're keeping score of what happens when you play, Marshall. But a little guy wants to check things out, man. You got to let him explore. Knock the table over. Thanks for coming in, y'all. But it's challenging at the start when you have only ever gone in high school, and then all of a sudden you're confronted with people that are your size that can pretty much run like you can. You got to work on things, and that's probably where Taylor's at. Noah Thomas, on the other hand, guy coming in from Texas A&M, he is someone who certainly should. He is someone who certainly should make an impact this fall at Georgia. We'll see, but you don't go get guys from inside the league that you are attracting through NIL, et cetera. You're not doing that so that they will maybe have a good game against Missouri. You need them to explode on the Gators against Auburn, Alabama, Texas. You're getting him because he was productive at Texas A&M, et cetera. So I think, Noah Thomas is someone that should produce at Georgia. Will he produce at G-Day? Again, guys that are receiving passes, I can't guarantee they're going to get the ball, because first of all, Georgia is going extremely conservative with this thing. I don't even know that these guys are going to be playing for sure. So you'll have to forgive me if I don't know the answer to that. But I would just Noah Thomas is a guy to pay attention to in the grand scheme of things as well, particularly tomorrow. Let's keep going here. And then the top 2 are kind of the, taco night basic. I don't want anything spicy. It's just the quarterbacks. So it's Ryan Puglisi, it's Gunnar Stockton. Look, Ryan Puglisi's never thrown a ball for Georgia except in practice. So we don't know really what you've got besides a very good pedigree, the physicality that's all there to play, not just at Georgia, but at the next level. But he's never played. So what's it really going to be like for Ryan Puglisi to get out there? He was the number three. The story last year, the story on Ryan Puglisi is this: as Gunnar Stockton lay what looked to me to be completely knocked out at the SEC championship game against Texas, the radio came down, because Carson was out. He didn't take his jersey off, none of that stuff. But Carson he couldn't move. He could not. He could only go like this, so he wasn't throwing a football. They radioed down, basically said, "Hey, put Puglisi in or Puglisi was set to go in," and the radio came down. Look, Carson can hand the ball off. That was the next play. They had to get into the end zone. It's good.
We from Manchester. Where you go to school? Nothing.
Nothing. Good to see you.
Nothing.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, brother.
All right, my man. A lot of folks coming in and say hi. We're at Red Zone. We'll be here until 5:30. They're open until 6. Please drop by. There's just also, you know what? I'm going to get to a couple. I'm going to spotlight a couple things in a second here that they've got that I think some of y'all will be interested in. Everybody's decked out in their red and black and all their Georgia clothing, so it's good to see everybody. So it's like a mini game day. It's not a mini game day. It is a game day. So Puglisi was going to come in. Carson comes in, hands the ball off. We all assumed that was Carson's last snap in college football, was to win the SEC championship game. He goes on to Miami, obviously, and then enter Gunnar Stockton for the Sugar Bowl. Look, I think Gunner's still got things to prove. And if you don't agree with me, I think you're wrong. Here's why. We do not have a lot of data on Gunnar Stockton, and the fact of the matter is that this program has the capability of winning the national championship this year. Doesn't mean they will, but they got to play better than they did in the Sugar Bowl. And although Gunnar did not play bad, I think he played pretty well. Could he have elevated the team a little bit more? Sure, but he's not the one missing blocks. He didn't miss that block that caused the fumble. He wasn't out there on special teams when that ball, when they take it the distance, Notre Dame. So there's a lot of stuff that Gunnar Stockton, there's always more you can do. There's always more you can do. But that's kind of the wrong evaluation of someone at this moment. The question is, what is Gunnar going to look like tomorrow? Being that it's going to be basically a throwing circus, it would be in my imagination. What's it going to be like for Gunnar tomorrow? And then can he translate everything that he's been doing off the field on the field? Well, and this is not off the field, but the running, leading everyone in running, that's a big deal, in my opinion. Why? Who wants to run? I don't, and I do. I don't want to run. I don't want to exert physical ability. I mean, if I could just not do anything and look great, I'd do that. But you have to, if you want to score touchdowns, if you want to be effective and efficient, you've got to work. That means being conditioned. Sometimes it's just mind over matter, mind over your body. And it's amazing what the body can do when your mind is shut off to pain, so to speak. So that will be what Gunnar, it will be taking what he has done and what he is doing on the field in workouts and translating it to a, a football experience at Georgia where he is leading them to trophies. And I think that's the question about this team and this program. I'm going to try to start to go live here on the talk, and we'll just see how this goes. But those are the guys that I would those are the guys that I'm paying the most attention to. And look, I love G-Day. I've grown to love it. In the years gone by, it wasn't the most useful thing to me. It is now. I think it's great. You're not, these schools, uh, they got to have the fans. And the only way, these events are for the fans. It's not for the team. We know that. But this is an important moment in time, and the band's going to be playing. So that's really important in the grand scheme of things. So as we get ready, as we get ready for G Day, that's just what I want to talk about and touch on are all of these things that Georgia, uh, you know, should be trying to accomplish tomorrow. Obviously, no injuries. That'd be number one for me. But like again, how does Gunner look? What does Puglisi look like? Is Noah Thomas going to ball out? How about Taylor Taylor? Elias Williams, I think, is and the future of Elias Williams is high. But Walker, Wangaston, Elijah Griffin, Justin Williams, Octavius Johnson, DeMelo Jones. Those are all guys that I'm paying attention to individually. As far as questions are concerned, this is something I wrote about over on the site. How crisp does the offense look? That's no different than what Ryan wrote. He's exactly right. He probably stole it from me, from all the things I've been saying. Will there be explosive plays? Will there be explosive plays by the offense after a year of not very many explosive plays? Uh, they're going to need to figure out how to become explosive, Georgia. Is there any semblance of a run game? That might not be easy to judge tomorrow at G Day. And then how is the secondary performing? So tomorrow again is going to be a tricky thing for this program because it is not going to. It's going to be a scrimmage, but it's not going to be the traditional way that you know everything seems to. It's going to be a lot of passing tomorrow. There's going to be a lot of passing comparatively speaking to what you'd see in a game. Typically last year Georgia's more like 60-40 throwing it to running it, way closer than that than they've been in the past. They would prefer to be 50-50 if they could. Thanks for coming in, y'all. But it just the way they were running, the way they were throwing dictated that they should be throwing more, and they did. So I don't know. I'm getting some shade from Ryan right now by text, and I will not stand for it. We'll be discussing this later tonight. Another thing that's so important when we talk about Georgia being crisp, are there any stupid penalties? What are stupid penalties? Any, any, any personal foul. That's just not going to work. Okay, any personal foul, any abnormally stupid pass interference, way too many offsides or false starts. Then you got a question about discipline, specifically with personal fouls. There should be no personal fouls at G Day. That just should never happen. So beyond the penalties, are guys going to where they're supposed to be? Are the passes easy? What I mean to say is, are the quarterbacks delivering the ball where they're supposed to be? Whether you're talking about Ryan Puglisi, whether you're talking about Gunnar Stockton, are they being accurate with the ball? All of these things matter in the grand scheme of things. Do they look crisp? Are they disciplined? You know, are the younger players taking too long to get off the ground? Once you get tackled, you're tackled. That's it. You don't need to uh, wallow in the Sanford Stadium grass. It is very nice grass. As a person who is as a person who is on the field for all of these games, Georgia has some of the nicest turf out there. Period. I'm going to diatribe about this right now. A lot of places have turf around their grass. That is the most annoying thing for someone who is on the grass. You think turf is comfortable? It is not. Everyone should have grass. South Carolina, Kentucky, Clemson. We want grass. We're in the South. Now, Kentucky, I'll give a pass. I get it. It's freezing up there half the time. But look, but there's no reason to take a nap on the ground. Just get up and go. And if Kirby is spotlighting you hanging out on the ground too long, that means that two things. It means A, you're hanging out on the ground too long. B, it means they're really expecting something from you this season, and it's time to get going on that front. And these guys are all the younger players are going to have to keep pushing because they're all going to be used this season. They're not all, but particularly if they're skill guys or defensive guys, they're probably going to get used. And then another thing to watch for tomorrow, the people that we know that were at practices and scrimmages, um, the clock was running a little quicker than it typically would from what we understand, the play clock. So are they doing that to the offense tomorrow? If they are, they're putting as much pressure as possible to get in and out of the huddle. And that pressure might not be on the quarterbacks, y'all. It may be on the younger offensive players, whether they're receivers or the running backs. I mean, if you're trying to identify who the Mike linebacker is and you're a running back and you see that play clock, although I don't know that running backs necessarily look at that. The more pressure that you can put on people, the more you will understand what they're like when pressure happens. What do you think it's going to be like when you go to Neyland? You think everybody's just going to like be like, oh, here comes Georgia, let's just let them win. That's not how it works. So you want as much pressure as you can on these guys. And look, the fact of the matter is, when you're opening with Marshall and when you're opening with the next school, I can't recall who it was. It's a directional school. You're Austin P. Nope. Yeah, Austin P. That's not the same as going to Neyland. Their first real test will be going to Neyland. I will say this about what's going on with Nico up at Tennessee. He is, from a purely Machiavellian standpoint, he is playing that exactly right. This is one of the last times that Tennessee can pay him an exorbitant amount of money and it not be under the cap. Allegedly, today he was not at, or yesterday he was not at practice, or today, whatever it is. So he's playing hardball with Tennessee. He better play well if he sticks around. But he's playing hardball with Tennessee. Why? Because he has all the power. He has all the power. Now, anybody would, probably almost anybody, hey there, would be interested in having him come and be their starting quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback at all. He's a very good one, actually. But I don't. If you're going to stay at Tennessee, this might not be the greatest move on earth because, I mean, if it's strictly about money, okay, but there's ramifications to everything that we do. And if you're hardballing the program right now, they're not going to forget that in 6 months when the Dogs roll into town. I can't remember off the top of my head who the Vols kick off with, but I'm looking it up right now. But that Georgia game is right around the corner. Yeah, I believe they host Syracuse. I could be slightly wrong, but I know they play Syracuse to start the season. So could they lose that game? No, it's at the Dome. Okay, they could lose that game. I don't think they will. I am skeptical. I'm skeptical they would lose that game. Let me see over on BetMGM what that number is for that game. That's a very curious situation in terms of that game. Make sure you're dropping on down here to Red Zone. As you can hear, every time you hear the door open, that's more people coming to take a look at what's going on here in town. Let's see. Yeah, Tennessee. Yeah, Tennessee's a two touchdown favorite to win that game. I mean, I am overwhelmingly skeptical they would lose that game. But I will add this: if they don't have their starting quarterback from the season before, that number will fall drastically. So if you're sort of in that world and you're with our buddies over at MGM, maybe you go grab 14. If you go grab that 14 on Syracuse. I mean, if Nico's not going to be playing for Tennessee, Tennessee's going to be in a real scramble to get things right. They'd still probably beat. Uh, beat Syracuse. That's a lot of orange in that stadium right there, by the way. Let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff they've got here at Red Zone. Just very briefly, I'm going to show you some of this stuff. You'll be able to see it better on YouTube and TikTok. But like this sort of stuff that, look, this was given to me very specifically to show y'all. So this is one. This is one of the items. I'm going to show something else that would be a little bit more Dean Legge style. Actually, I have used this a lot to work out in. Look, this sweatshirt, you can only get it at Red Zone. It's a neat little sweatshirt. So go to ugaredzone.com. We've got it almost all the time at Dog Post. So a lot of people really like this. They had to remake it after the 21 national championship because, of course, Georgia won the 2022 national championship. Not so much in a landslide, but it was, well, a lot of those games were landslides now. So, yeah, the Dogs are getting ready for G-Day. Dean Legge here from Dog Post. Make sure you're signing up for our newsletter. We're here at Red Zone in Athens on Clayton Street. If you don't know where Clayton Street is, that's okay. You know where the arches are. You walk north. That's away from campus. Up one block, take a left at Mrs. Harry's place. That's past the Chick-fil-A. And you'll turn left and you will be at Red Zone before you know it. You'll see the book, one of the books or the books in the window. Well, it's got a lot of Georgia stuff, just like everybody, just like everything else in Athens. But these everybody in Red Zone is our friends Scott and Mindy, who are not here today. have been we've been in cahoots now for years, and it's hard to do stuff like this without their support. So come on down here to Red Zone and pick something up for yourself. There's all sorts of things. I'm going to get to the more stuff in a little bit here, but look, Gunner is going to be. Most people will be reacting to how Gunner looks, and I think that that is completely understandable. We are um, we are we live in a world where quarterbacks are the most famous people in sport, whether you're talking about Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. So these are extremely important pieces to the puzzle. And what Gunner does tomorrow will matter. It is 8% of spring practice. That needs to be kept into perspective, but it is, well, 6%, 7%, but it is that 6 or 7%. And the other thing I would say is it matters a little bit more. And the reason why is because there's fans there, the band is there, and people are filling in downtown right now. They're wanting to see things, and so there's implied pressure on the team. This is why I mean, listen, if you're Georgia, you have to always have G Day because it is a dry run. It gives you the capability to see what someone would be like when there's pressure on, and the more people watching, the more pressure's on. That's all there is to it. You got to get guys out of their comfort zone, which goes back to the very curious thing. What if we see tomorrow? If you see those of you who are a little bit more studious, more astute observers, if you see that play clock running uh, quicker than they're spotting the ball, that is a Georgia thing. That is not a new rule. That has been what we've been told has been going on, or at least went on. So that's something to pay attention to when you see Ryan Puglisi, when you see Gunnar Stockton. That is something that y'all should pay attention to at G Day. Now, let me just talk about this for a second here too. One reason one reason why you're going to want to be tuning in for Riding Home, tuning in for Thoughts from the Box from Matt DeBerry, tuning in from Ryan's Rapid Reactions, and then Legge Thoughts the next day. This thing is not televised. I actually could talk about that for 2 hours, but it is not televised. So if you're not one of the 80-ish, 70-ish thousand people that will be there, I doubt very seriously it will be 90,000 people. If you're not one of the folks that will be there tomorrow, you're not going to see this thing. You may see highlights, but the highlights are only in 3-minute form. So unless you're the Southeastern Conference and Disney, you're not going to get highlights that you can run that are a lot further than that. So there's not going to be a bunch of scouting across America of Georgia. Let me give you all this real quick story from back in the day, from 20 years ago, actually. So going into the 20th season, into the 20th season, going into the 2005 season, Georgia was opening with uh, Boise State. That's right. It's DJ Shockley's first game, and back in the day, there were all sorts of channels on DirecTV at the time that you could just get, and Georgia was very eager to get their hands on the Boise State spring film from that spring. Well, they could. I don't know why they couldn't get it, but I could. And so, you know, I told Coach Rick. I said, "Hey, listen, I got a copy of that Boise game," and he reacted very favorably to me giving it to them. And that was a very Coach Rick didn't always get super excited about everything, but he was very excited to get that Boise tape. So even 20 years ago, spring games were being watched by everyone, even when it was very hard to get a hold of them. But I remember that very well, recording on DirecTV and getting it over to Georgia. I had to get it to him in VHS form. I had no other way to do it. So it was a very that was something else. But anyway, you know, it's going to be fun. It's going to be curious to see what, again, Bo Walker, Gunner, etc. And then, two, what will the offense look like? Mike Bobo has been getting plenty of criticism, and plenty of it, plenty of it justified as it relates to the production. Uh, I'm having to combat Ryan Curley. right now, which is something else. Um, what will we see tomorrow? I can't imagine it will be exotic in any way. I would imagine maybe Dylan Bell gets some different looks. I would imagine that there could be some different things, but I don't think that there's going to be any sort of wild stuff that you've never seen before, etc. Let me try to take some questions generally, or comments more than anything, from YouTube. Here is someone. The Dogs' defense should be better this season. We're going to see about that. We're going to see about that. I don't know if that's true or not. I think that we're going to see. I mean, I think one thing about this program under its current leadership is they are always good on defense. They are always good on defense. I mean, you have to think about it. No, how often does Georgia just get scored on? They did against Alabama over there. That's about it last year. I mean, you didn't. I mean, Clemson scored a lot of points on some people, not on Georgia. They scored 3. Uh, what about the return of Colby Young? So Colby Young will give Georgia yet another weapon. The thing about the receivers that you need to have is consistent production. And if you're not going to be consistent with the production, then you're really probably never going to have a breakout game. And even if you do, you know, if you can't depend on someone to consistently receive the ball, they're called receivers, not droppers. So that's going to be step one for Georgia this coming season. Someone's saying they did not know Dog Post had TikTok. That is our fault. We definitely have TikTok. We have Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're all over all the socials. So there's that. Uh, yeah, here's another comment on YouTube, which is I love the dog walk, even if it's just for G Day. We'll always be thankful for Mark Richt creating this tradition at Georgia. And there's a very quick question here from someone about if radio will be broadcasting. They will be broadcasting. I do not know when they will start broadcasting, but I would imagine at least an hour before the game. But I can tell you right now, they will be broadcasting, and they will be taking breaks occasionally. So let me just say this about G Day tomorrow. There won't. It may be a lot faster event than people are used to, because in the past you had to fit a 2-hour window. That might not be the case tomorrow. So my understanding is that radio may just take their timeouts during quarter timeouts. So this could be a situation where Georgia just says, "Hey, we're going to do radio breaks at the quarters, and you're only going to get 4 breaks, and that's it." We'll see. I don't know the answer to that, but they definitely will have radio tomorrow. As it relates to dog walk, I'm trying to remember when he started that, because it was not 2001. I think it was soon thereafter. I thought at first, to me, I thought, well, you're just kind of trying to be like everybody else. But I think, Mark did so much for Georgia. Um, when you think about when Mark Richt took Georgia's program over, they had lost 3 games in a row to Georgia Tech. They had lost 2 games in a row to South Carolina. Excuse me, that's incorrect. They had lost a game to South Carolina. It's almost slipped behind Carolina. Good to see you, man. Um, they had slipped behind Carolina in a way. Um, they had lost 3. That's what it was. They had lost 2 of 3 to Carolina, or 3 of 5, whatever it was. It wasn't great, but it was the Tech situation that was so bad. Mark elevated Georgia on the national scene. Okay, Jim Donnan did too. Jim Donnan took what Ray Goff had done. He elevated it for sure. You have to remember, the, the head coach at Kansas turned this job down. He turned this job down, and he eventually went to Minnesota. That's where Georgia was at. That was not reality, but that was where they were at. And that was not so good at the time. When Mark came in, are we good? Yeah. When Mark came in, Tennessee had dominated Georgia. You turn around and look back. I think Mark went 10-5. He might have gone 9-6 against the Vols. He flipped that. Auburn had dominated Georgia. I mean, like 15 years, 20 years. The 80s, that was bad. 90s against Auburn. I mean, so it had gotten pretty rough for Georgia over time. He completely flipped that. He dominated Georgia Tech. He went 13-2. They had lost 3 games in a row against Tech. So um, I think dog walk was one thing that Mark did, but he did so much to elevate the program. And then obviously, coming basically within a play, won a national championship in 2012, won the SEC championship in 2 and 5. It was time for a change. I think the way that he handled the 15th season was not ideal, but and it was cause for termination. However, that doesn't mean that you kick him out the door. I think he did a great job at Georgia. I think he's one of the great coaches in SEC history, to be honest. He just didn't win the national championship, and I don't think there's anything. There's a lot of really good coaches that have not won national championships, and there's a lot of not great coaches that won national championships. Gene Chizik, Les Miles, anybody that won at LSU that's not Nick Saban. You had Larry Coker at Miami. There's plenty of people that were kind of one-hit wonders, and Mark just didn't win it. And you look at Bob Stoops at Oklahoma, and all the times that OU was in position to play for national championship. Part of that because of where they were at, not playing in the SEC, etc. He won one national championship at Oklahoma. He made them into a national power. He won one national championship. Steve Spurrier won one national championship. One. Steve Spurrier is probably the third best coach in SEC history. Now, that's a good question at this point. Who is the better coach in terms of history? Is it Steve Spurrier or is it Kirby Smart? Because Steve was at Florida for 11 years, won a national championship, played for another, won the league multiple years in a row, made the Gators a national power, the likes of which they never were before, and only once since then have been. So in the quarter century since Steve left, Florida has for a 4-year period was unbelievable, and other than that, they've been very pedestrian. Here's a question talking about what's the biggest position concern for me this season. Quite clearly to me, it's the offensive line. If you can get your offensive line right, everything flows. It's like the Force in Star Wars. If you get that right, you're good. If you cannot figure that part out, it's going to be very hard to function. Okay, it's going to be very hard to function and do what you need. Um, that that should be better, but it wasn't last year, and that's just not good enough. And I think that that's something that Georgia has got to get right. When you talk about Stacey Searles, when you talk about Mike Bobo, all these guys, this is something that they've got to get right now. Someone's asking about parking. Although I do not work for the university, I'm going to put this on the screen and show you this. The page is all you have to do is Google UGA football parking, and it will pop up on the screen. You're going to want to go down to these lots right here. I would say this about parking, having done this for 25 years. Know where you're going. Give yourself time. And Georgia is one of the best situations in the SEC as far as parking is concerned. Missouri is probably the best one. But make sure that you are giving yourself some time and know where you're going. East Campus gets closed. East Campus is the road that runs right beside the stadium. And on the other side, there's Sanford Drive. They are both closed on game day. So there's a lot of parking on East Campus. Make sure you know where you're going. We are at Red Zone downtown in Athens. There's all sorts of gear that they've got. I'm going to quickly show it. and put it in my lap and then move on to these next subjects. I cannot do stuff without them. Do you think it is easy to cover this program? It's not. It takes a lot of money. This is a very nice Cutter and Buck shirt. I don't think this is a shirt. This is a $70 wardrobe ensemble with a like a small hood. It's like if you're playing out there or you're running, etc. And here's yet another one. This is from Champion. This is an This is a small, so it would not fit me. A little pocket there for you to keep your notes in and all sorts of logo action here. You can pop in right now until 6 o'clock and grab this at G Day at Red Zone. Another 3/4 zip at Cutter and Buck, which is the sort of stuff that I would likely wear. Being I have one of those on right now. So and now we got someone stopping to check it out here. It's quite nice. So that's the sort of gear that they have here. And look, they're my friends. I understand that. They've been very supportive of us. But just as a consumer, I would not want to mess with parking at Tate. And the bookstore is great. It really is. But this is a locally owned business. It's not a corporation. And you can get exclusive stuff like this right here. And the story behind this is they had made this what was called PE sweatshirt. They made this PE sweatshirt after the 22 season, and then they won the national championship. And after the 21 season, they won the national championship in 22. And they have all sorts of. I would turn the camera, but I can't get. There's another one over there that says Georgia Mom, Georgia Alum. Those are all exclusive to Red Zone. So make sure you're doing that. As far as parking is concerned, now listen, give yourself some time. If you do not have a parking pass, here's what I would do. I would go downtown. I would park. I would either eat the ticket or I would park in the deck, and I would just take it from there and just walk. I mean, it's going to be 70-ish degrees tomorrow. It's not going to be hot. There's not going to be really challenging as it relates to the sun. Just go and have fun. Y'all don't know how good you've got it with Athens. I do. I go to Auburn. I go to Starkville. I go to Columbia. I go to Knoxville. I go to everywhere Georgia plays. It's not like Athens. It's not like Athens. So take advantage of what you've got. All the campuses are nice, but nobody has this. Nobody has where you can get a very good meal, or you can just get Chick-fil-A and you can roll through downtown, roll through campus. You can see everything. You can see the grass, the buildings, where you went to school, or where you partied with your grandfather or your dad or your mom or wherever they went to school, or if it's just your family tradition to cheer on the Dogs, whatever. You can walk through and see everything. It's such a nice walk. And then you spill into the stadium. So people don't realize how nice they've got it. And there's a statement here on TikTok about how uh, G Day has free parking. I'm not talking about I'm talking if you have a pass. Okay, it's irrelevant if it's free or not. If you know where you're parking, go there. Give yourself some time. But if you don't know where you're going, I would park downtown. I would walk around downtown. There's all sorts of shops and places to visit, etc. And I would completely take advantage of all Athens, Georgia has to offer. And let me tell you, it has a lot to offer. Let's see if Mark Richt wins the national championship, he would have surpassed Vince Dooley. That's a good question. I think the thing with Vince and Mark, the difference was that Vince was around a lot longer. That Vince was the athletic director. And listen, you know, Vince's legacy at Georgia, um, Vince's legacy at Georgia is that he built the modern athletic department at Georgia. Everybody remembers him for winning the national championship, and I get that. But Vince's lasting legacy for me is he built. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. Vince's lasting legacy at Georgia to me is far more than the national championship and far more than Herschel or, all those great players that played for him. It's that he built a robust athletic department that saw national championships in tennis for the men and the women, for the national championship in baseball, track, and virtually every sport except soccer and volleyball. in men's basketball and women's basketball. They've won national championships. Most schools don't have that. Most schools don't have that at all. I would be remiss if I did not add the discussion about Red Zone being one of the few places that you can get Redcoat stuff. There's a lot of Redcoat gear here. Let's see. This this right here, I did not write this book, as you can see, but this is a neat book about becoming a Redcoat. I had a family member who was a Redcoat band member. Listen, you're not Georgia without the Redcoats. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Another thing, Georgia, there's a lot of great bands in the SEC. LSU has a great band. You're not Georgia football without the Redcoats. I'm having a hard time getting this back. Keep your seats, everyone. So, uh, so here's a question. I think I'm kind of delayed here on some of these. Um, what do we know about? What do we need to know about the outside linebackers? Listen, Georgia's got a lot of talent at linebacker, generally speaking. Not just like right now, but this is a group that. And by the way, listen, if you're watching this right now, I really do appreciate you hanging out and so forth. We're at Red Zone downtown. Obviously, if you're watching, you're either on the way or you're kind of pinned in Lawrenceville or, gosh, hopefully somewhere not in traffic. But come on down and take your time getting here. But they'll be here until 6, and then of course they open tomorrow. I'll be here till 5, and you can just wave at me. But it's it, this group, this linebacker group is very gifted. They're a very good team. They do a very good job of running, tackling, etc. This is a very good linebacker group. I'll just tell you that right now. Who is the best one? I couldn't say. We had some interest in this quarter zip, so I'll show it one more time. And that's the thing about coming down here is like you can't get both of these at the bookstore. You can't get both of these at other places. So Academy or whatever. This is a true downtown Athens place. If that matters to you, like it matters to me, check everything out. All right, so a couple of questions here about. Um, uh, there's one here. Will Georgia be active in the spring portal? So, of course, I don't know the answer to that specifically. I would imagine they're going to have to be active with losing a player or two because, by my math, they're over the number. Now, that doesn't mean that has to happen. Guys don't have to be on scholarship. So, there's any number of ways that that you can do things. But my suspicion is that there will be some activity in the portal, and we'll just see what happens. Uh, if Puglisi, can y'all stream G Day? From we are prohibited from streaming it. That is not something that's permitted. Um, Talking about Ryan Puglisi and his situation, does he stay if he doesn't win the job? Well, I mean, look, I don't know why he would leave. I don't know what, the guy's never played a snap in college football. Why would he? Why would he leave? I don't think it's a crazy question. Thanks for coming in. I think that I think it's a legitimate question, but I think it's a legitimate question. But I think if you're Ryan Puglisi, why would you how do you benefit to going to Wake Forest or UConn? You don't. I mean, look at the last few quarterbacks that have started at Georgia. They have all, well, and Carson will too. They have all had an opportunity to play in the NFL. Well, you're not going to necessarily get that at another place. Now, eh, you know, everybody's got to make their own decision about what's going on. But the timeline doesn't always have to be that if you don't play in your first 18 months that you just check out. That doesn't have to be the way things are. I understand that the way the world works now, guys want or people want to quickly move to their next opportunity, and that's fine. But I also think that if you're getting world class, if you're getting paid to be developed by world class institution, you should take advantage of that. I had to hang up on a phone call right there. That's why that looked that way. So we're an hour into it here. I'm at Red Zone in Athens. And, look, they've been very supportive. Oh, and I don't know how to turn the camera, but that's okay. Um, they've been very supportive through the years for us. Of course, you can pick up Double Dogs. A lot of people out there in TikTok world may not be aware of the old Double Dogs. This is a book that was written after Georgia's national championship season. You can pick that up over on Dog Post. I've got links there, or you just type in Double Dogs and it will pop up on the Google machine. This is something that is not available anywhere else. Is I don't even know if anybody else wrote about the national championship. I'll show it to our friends over on YouTube. Um, the second national championship. Everybody wrote something about the first one. Look at that cover image. Who could shoot that well? That is a heck of a cover image, if I do say so myself. And then, of course, like stuff like that that you see above me, that's stuff that you can pick up at Red Zone. But the only place you can pick up Double Dogs, the only place you can pick up Dogstruction, which is right down here, the only place they can do that, you can find that in retail, is right here. It's right here at Red Zone in Athens. It's a cover shot from Chris Collins. And then, of course, Dylan Weber getting both of these Kirby shots. So that's what is it like? What does it feel like to win a national championship? It feels like that. That's what it feels like. You may ask, no one has, but what was it like on the field? What was it like after the game? What was it like in Los Angeles? How was that different than Indianapolis? I think, you know, Indianapolis against Alabama was such a I think it was such an emotional experience, not just for the people playing for the Dogs, but there were a lot of people in the stands that were extremely emotional, understandably, about the win. And that it came against Alabama, I think, is one thing, but I think they were just emotional to see the success of their team and therefore themselves. So it's something they've been waiting for a long, long time. And you don't know. That may be the last national championship, the one in Los Angeles, that Kirby ever wins. We don't know. I'm skeptical of that, but we don't know. But it was Indianapolis was very cold. It was cold inside uh, that facility. Um, Los Angeles was not. It was rainy, so that was a little bit strange. But we expected sun the whole time in Los Angeles, but it was unseasonably cold. Um, but both of those were, well, we had a very sneaking, well, we were certain that Georgia would beat TCU. I thought Georgia should beat Alabama. I didn't know if they would, but that was, and it didn't look like they would. I've still not seen that game. I've still not watched Alabama, Georgia, not for any particular reason, just because I'm so busy. But, I was able to leave TCU, Georgia at the third quarter. The only reason I went back out there on the fourth quarter was to take the one image of Stetson and Kirby. That was the only reason I went back onto the field, was to take this image right here, because I knew the game was over. The game was over in the second quarter. I mean, that image right there was the only reason. As soon as that happened, I left. I didn't leave. That's not right. I got ready for the post game, and of course, the post game was just a disaster. Anytime that happens, it's always so difficult for those of us. I've not opened this book in a while. It really is a very good book, and the Ohio State article is something that we've not written anywhere. It's not been. I've not put it online or anything, but it is the inside story on that game from a lot of different perspectives. We talked to every single person on the field right here on this block punt, a block, not block punt, but you got to think about this game right here, the Ohio State game, how much special teams mattered in that game, and the timeout that Kirby called, even though Ohio State was offside, the missed the sidewinding kick. I mean, you almost missed the one before that. But we talked to everybody on the field, and I remember talking to Jalen Carter, and he had helped the guy. The kicker was just like sitting on the ground, and understandably, I mean, that game was exhausting. Um, and Jalen told me that he went over to the guy. He didn't say he felt bad, but I could tell he felt bad. And that was just that night. I could not sleep. Here's the thing about games, and G Day might not be a great example of it. when you're on the field, and perhaps some of y'all feel this in the stadium, um, you so much energy goes through your body, it's hard to turn that energy off. And it doesn't, it doesn't matter. That Ohio State game was just something else. And I'm not sure as much as if you look back at the Sugar Bowl in 1980, that game that was just midday 1981 on January 1st, that was a boring game. It was not a well played game. It was a boring game. Oklahoma Rose Bowl, that was an exceptional game. It was one of the best college football games of all time. But that Ohio State Georgia game at the Peach Bowl, that game was nuts. And you had two Heisman Trophy finalists. You had the team that would go on to win the national championship. You had two of the largest brands in college football fighting with each other tooth and nail, and the plot twists couldn't stop in that game. It was amazing, and as good as you know, the I grew up in Atlanta, and I love Atlanta, but as picturesque and as awesome as the Rose Bowl itself is, that game was cool, but it was not the Georgia, Ohio State. Those two games and Tech, Georgia from last year were probably the wildest, heart racing, etc. games as I've been around. And there's been a lot of them. I'm trying to think of. We good? A lot. It's getting a lot more crowd. It's 4 o'clock East Coast time. I am downtown in Athens at Red Zone, which is our downtown headquarters, Dog Post headquarters downtown in Athens. And we're talking about some of the wildest games in Georgia history. I got started talking about Ohio State, Georgia, and I think Georgia should expect to play Ohio State in the near future. I mean, Ohio State is going. I said to y'all a lot, Ohio State, they're going to win the national championship at some stage. They're just too good. Well, they did that this past season. That doesn't mean that they're going to repeat. Um, and so, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Oregon, Alabama, Tennessee, Penn State, these teams are going to dominate what the near future is for college football because the brands are so big. These guys want to play there. All due respect to Miami or Clemson or even Florida State, guys they want to play on huge stages like you get in the Southeastern Conference and the Big Ten. That night, I thought Georgia would really have a hard time with Ohio State. They were a 3-point favorite, maybe a 4-point favorite, whatever it was. It wasn't a lot. And I was quite concerned that they would lose that game. I thought that Ohio State had a very good quarterback, clearly. They had exceptional wide receivers. They had everything you needed to defeat Georgia. They could score. And the way that they were scoring and the way that Ohio State, the turnover from Stetson at the beginning of the game made it very challenging. Made it very challenging for Georgia to get back into that game. They weren't out of it at the half, but that third quarter, man, they were in real trouble. They got down 18, and it really did look over. But then they just made play after play after play. They adjusted defensively to what Ohio State was doing. And in terms of, you know, in the Grand Pantheon of games, Alabama, Georgia for the national championship is one of the greatest games in college football history. The Rose Bowl with Oklahoma and Georgia is one of the greatest games in college football history. In terms of regular season, it would be very challenging to see a better football game than Georgia Tech in 2024. But Ohio State Georgia was such a. The other thing that's being left out here is before that game kicked off, everybody was in their seats. Why? Because the stadium had Michigan TCU up on the big screen. Everybody knew whoever won that game was going to win the national championship. That game in Atlanta was for the national championship. And the Ohio State people could not have been happier that Michigan lost. They were geeked. But boy, that was a crushing way to lose a national championship. And trust me, they lost the national championship that night. I mean, that was horrible. And that was a brutal way to lose. But Georgia, is expert at brutal losses through the years. It happens, but I think that night we did not go to bed. Part of the problem was a goof up by the Peach Bowl people. We didn't get back to the hotel until I think 3 o'clock in the morning, and the hotel was half a mile away from the stadium, so that was a real problem. Of course, the game ended at the stroke of midnight. Usually we're done with media obligations about an hour later, and then it takes about an hour. Well, it took probably at least an hour and a half. So I said 3. We probably didn't get back to the hotel till 4. And then there's still more work to be done. That's the problem with our job. Um, I, it's hard to say that wasn't the defining win of Kirby's career. However, it's hard to say that Indianapolis wasn't either against Alabama. So it's take your pick. I do think Notre Dame in 17, Notre Dame in 19 was a big deal, but Notre Dame in 17 was sort of an arrival for them. But that Ohio State game was just something else. And the panic in the air. 2012 Florida was a big deal, no question, because it was all on the line then. You're going to get fewer moments like that, but I think in the regular season, but I think the panic will reach fever pitch as we get into these quarterfinals and semifinals. They will get better and better over time. I will say I am concerned for the SEC championship game. The atmosphere was not at all like it has been in the past because that used to be a terminal game. It's not been lately. 3 of the 4 games lately have not been terminal, 21, 22, or 24, or 24, but 23 was to Georgia's detriment, and so that was not a good thing. Thanks to everybody for watching us. Um, we are at Red Zone downtown in Athens. I'm Dean Legge. I've covered Georgia for 25 years. Covered the Southeastern Conference the same amount of time, so got a wealth of experience. Make sure you're signing in to our newsletter, which can be found over on Dog Post. If you're watching us on YouTube or TikTok, we really do appreciate it. Here's a question. Do you think the uncompetitive nature of the TCU Georgia game took a little bit away from the accomplishment? Uh, I, no, I do not think so, and here's why. I think it stamped how good Georgia was, and therefore emphasized the accomplishment of that team. Well, I was looking back yesterday or 2 days ago at that 22 season, and they really thumped Oregon. And they really thumped South Carolina. But the other 3 games they played that beginning of the season, they didn't play great against Samford. They almost lost to Missouri. They did not play well against Kent State. It was just 22. That was a really, really, really good team. They showed what they could do, but they weren't dominant completely at the beginning of the game. And then when they came back from Missouri and they played Auburn, it was just not even close from that point until the Ohio State game. And I knew Ohio State would push them, and let me tell you, they did. I don't think there was any luck involved, but I don't believe in luck, so that's me. And I think that Ohio State was fortunate to get the kick before that to set up that game-winning touchdown. It does remind me, however, I was just thinking about this just now. I was in the corner of the end zone to get this shot of A.D. Mitchell catching the ball for the touchdown against Ohio State. Okay, and because I was at where I was at, I could see and hear a lot from the Georgia sideline. Of course, I pay a lot of attention to what Georgia says on the sideline anyway. That you can hear. I mean, you're right in front of the redcoats. Sometimes it can get very loud. Let's see here. So here's the game-winning touchdown, and nailed that shot. But because of where I was at, I could hear everything that Kirby and them or could see everything that Kirby and them were saying, and they were telling the Stetson, "You're going too fast," which he was. He was going too fast. However, there was no question that they felt like they had momentum, and they did. Um, that moment, AD was not going to be denied, and I remember him catching it. And you hear the sound of things. So I don't have this open version of Dog Instruction, but when AD, as it turns out, AD Mitchell caught both plays that put Georgia on top in the national championship games that they won. That call against Alabama, I wasn't sure he caught it. I was right there. There are rubber pellets on the turf, and some had hit me in the vicinity, and so I wasn't certain if he had caught it or not. But he did, and he had jostled with the Bama DB when he was getting up, but you could just hear the redcoats first because they were right there, um, and just the loud high pitch, and of course that put them up 18-17. If not, no, it put them up 19-18, whatever it was, and of course they hit Brock Bowers to go up um, 8. They went up 8. But now, and that Brock Bowers play was a third down. The play before A.D. Mitchell against South Carolina had been a sack. So let me tell you though, and there's someone asking me, and this is a good question. And one of these days we are going to finish these documentaries that we have at Dog Post. Um, so here's the story of the hi. Here's a story of of Keely's return. And Keely had his event here at Red Zone. It was such a good time just after the Kentucky game in 2022. We had an event with Keely Ringo. He was super great and easy to deal with. I try to say hi to him when I can, when we're on the field together. But so I had learned my lesson, or so I thought, that plays and championship games end in the end zone. I'd learned that with 2012 Georgia, Alabama. I'd learned that with Georgia, Florida in 12. I'd learned that in 2017 with the Rose Bowl. I learned that you want to be in the end zone because 70% of the time, the end zone is where plays end or games end. There was only one thing that would end this game, which was be a play in the end zone. Well, I start walking towards where Alabama's going. They're down 8. Georgia had 2 opportunities to stop them. They could stop them in the field, or they could stop them on a 2-point conversion. And I did not think Alabama was going to score, but it. So I remember talking to Andrew Tucker Davis, who works for the university, and I said to him, I've seen this play before. I'm going to the other end. So I walked around the Georgia bench after the Brock Bowers touchdown. I walked around the Georgia bench. Georgia was up 8. And here, you can take a look at this one. This one's open. And I walked around the Georgia bench, and I went down to about the Georgia 30-yard line. And Alabama was driving, of course. And David Pollock was a little bit to my left with his son, I think his oldest son. And Ben Watson was not so far from me. And as a photographer, I take a knee, take 2 knees. And when the ball was thrown up in the air, I was like, that's going to get picked. Got picked. What I did not realize or think was that, Keely would take it all. By then, I'm pinned in, so I can't go anywhere. And Dylan Weber got great shots of Keely coming through, but I was backed up. So here comes Ben Watson with his Air Force Ones, jumping, thank you, jumping up in the air and blocking me from taking the shots. And I mean, I don't have any ill will about it. It just cracks me up that he was that invested 20 years later. And and the shot that Ryan Curley got of that, there's a shot, and we have it for sale, that Keely signed, and it's a shot of everybody in the play, and it's Keely taking the ball back, Kirby screaming at him to get down, and William Poole. I can't remember everybody's doing that, but so Keely's taking off, and Kirby's about to freak out, saying, "Hey, listen, get down." Nobody was catching him, man. And the funniest thing at the time, I guess it's not at the time. Well, it was at the time. This I can show you. So here comes Keely running down, right? And Nolan Smith, William Poole, right there, Keely Ringo. And that is a guy that's not famous for this play. He's famous for the play he made against Georgia Tech this past year, knocking a fumble out. But he was sprinting down Dan Jackson, the field, to probably just feel the wind at his face as he was watching his childhood team, if I'm not mistaken, win the national championship. He was on the field and he sprinted down there. And Keely's already in the end zone. Bro, right here that knocked him out, he wasn't catching him. But man, Dan Jackson took the biggest hit right there. I mean, he got smashed. And I talked to him about it at the Sugar Bowl. I can't remember what he said, but Keely was an extremely fast player. I mean, there was this notion that Keely could play offense at Georgia too, just because of his straight up speed. And I think that was an understandable suspicion because of just how fast he was. That guy, he could not be a nicer person. I dealt with him in business too, so I'm just saying. All right, 3/4 zip from Cutter and Buck. You can grab this at Red Zone downtown in Athens. Exclusive. Only can get this. Only at Red Zone is their PE National Championship shirt. We're going to talk about how they have 4 national championships on here and not 7 some other time. Just a basic Sunday sweatshirt that you can grab from Champion and make it work. This is not a 3/4 zip. This is sort of frat-tastic. Maybe you're going out to play a few rounds. I plug these in. Maybe you're going to go some shots in on the range or whatever. If that's what you choose to do, that's what this would be. I would say plugged in for. It's got a little hood if you want it. This is for springtime and maybe early fall. Sort of new Auburn game, and then of course this is just like some of the stuff. Oh, there's you could not imagine how much inventory they have here. So come and grab it while you can. Of course, they also have ujredzone.com. I would make sure that you're on their mail list for when they have things. They're gonna have some new baseball stuff in soon. Hopefully in time for regionals, for when y'all are coming up here for that, or super regionals, likely both. But all sorts of stuff. Why do I talk about Red Zone? Because Red Zone, A, they're my friends. B, they support us. C, we can't do this stuff, y'all, without their good to see you. We can't do this without our partners, of which Red Zone is one. Here's a statement. So I'm thankful no one was recording my actions during that play. Allegedly, I was jumping up and down and ran every yard with Keely. I doubt you ran every yard. I will say this though, I don't begrudge anyone for their emotion in that moment. It was one of the things that in your lifetime you've just not seen it. So that they won a close game and the cork was popped out of the bottle all at once made for so I'm a fan of blowouts. Here's why. Because I have a job. And my job involves me running around like crazy after these games. And when we know what's going to happen, it's a lot easier to deal with than if you're hanging on every moment of a game. Like the Georgia Tech game this past year, that was very difficult for me. Not just because we were going back and forth with the overtime, but just that was physically difficult. And Kirby was kind of making fun of us. And I was like, hey man, you're not carrying around 50 pounds of gear. I am. So you got all that. But, that game made for some amazing, dramatic moments. You didn't have that against TCU. You didn't have that against, whatever. Enter the name of any game. Georgia in many ways has been a road grader, but you did have that against Ohio State. You did have that against Alabama. And this last Alabama game, that was one of the games of the season. I mean, Georgia had 2 games, if not 3, that were games of the season. But like Notre Dame, Georgia, boring. I mean, just not a well-played game by really either team, certainly not Georgia. Georgia, Tennessee, Georgia, Ole Miss, Georgia, Texas. These were not great
like, oh man, did you see? No, it wasn't a great. These were not great games, well executed and so forth. Um, so that's the part that when you get the excitement, the drama, the passion, the tension, that is when you really get huge moments. And I think with the Final Four earlier this week, you certainly got that. You certainly got that in the form of Duke collapsing and then Houston collapsing uh, immediately thereafter. It was just one thing after another at that Final Four. It was something else. Let me just tell you. I'm gonna try to stick these back in here and get going again on.
It's hard. It's hard with ambient noise for me because if someone talks to me, I naturally try to talk back. So there's that. But I look, I can I can assure you that this Georgia team has all it needs to do the same thing that these last ones do. However, they're not as gifted as those teams were. They're not quite as gifted as those teams were. They don't have the high end talent, but they got a lot of talent. But they don't have Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Trayvon Walker, and N'Kobe. And I mean, it's a wonder anybody scored on those guys at all. It's a wonder anybody scored on those guys at all. Who takes the starting cornerback slots based off your intel? So listen, for sure, I would say Everett um, is going to. I would say that. Then that's a good question. I mean, okay, so your safeties, I think you have a pretty good idea with Aguero, and let me get the entire roster in front of me here because I don't want to leave anybody out. Um, but I would say at safety you're not gonna have a giant question mark because you've got multiple guys there that have played a fair amount. Is Daniel Harris going to hold off Ellis Robinson? Is DeMello Jones going to get in there at one of the corners? I don't know. What about on the opposite side? We were talking about Dylan Everett. I don't know who his backup would be at safety. I would say Aguero and KJ are going to be the guys, and Ja'Cory Thomas is probably going to be your star or your an extra guy. He's played that a lot, but then you've got Branch coming in from SC. I mean, I don't know. Is Harris gonna? It's just it's hard to know for sure where they're at. That's why it's so important to see what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, I think the safeties and the DBs really more the corners than anything else. That's going to be the part that's interesting to watch. But I think tomorrow is not a great example of everything because so many of those. I mean, it's going to be a lot of throwing. It's going to be a lot of throwing, and then in the front, Jonah Ajayi, there's been plenty of good to hear about him. Christian Miller. Xavier McLeod, I think I would like to see more from him this season. Let's just see what happens there. Gabe Harris looks like he's going to have to pick up that pass rusher, but C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, these are some Justin Wilson, Justin Williams, Chris Cole. They got some serious linebackers. How good is Elijah Griffin? Is Nambi Agobu? Excuse me, I'm saying his name wrong. I know how to say his first name, Nambi. Where are we at there? Jordan Hall. There's a lot to work with, Justin Green, but they got to go do it. They've got to go do it. And, you know, uh, where's Ellis Robinson in this entire thing? Who is opposite Everett? Who is opposite Everett? That's the question. And I think that um, until you know who's opposite Everett, you might not be able to completely stack everything up together. But I don't know. Let's see. Georgia doesn't have talent of 21-2. Is there any chance the Dogs are building enough depth in the trenches? They can win a national championship without building depth. I think that's what I was trying to say, perhaps inarticulately earlier, is that you know this this team and everybody else, the days of just locking guys up. I mean, it's not likely that you're going to go two and three deep on the defensive line anymore because guys are just going to leave. They're going to leave. I mean, again, Tennessee's starting quarterback is threatening a walkout right now. I understand his situationally as far as the calendar is concerned. I understand what he's doing. I don't think it's the greatest move on earth as in terms of. I mean, if you're just playing Machiavellian, hardball, sure, but like if you're going back to Tennessee and you're doing this right now, I mean, that is to me, you'd better have a place that you're going to. You'd better have that place ready. But even then, in that case, I don't see why you would get mixed up with Tennessee. I'd just leave, right? So he really wants a payday, which no challenge there. But he's playing hardball, and those people up there love the Vols. They are not going to think this is funny at all. And for all of the XYZ is selfish or whatever. They didn't ever do this. Didn't happen. Did not happen. So we're at Red Zone Live downtown in Athens for a little bit longer here as we get ready for G Day in Sanford Stadium. Will not be on television. If you do not go to the game, you're not going to see it. Um, you know, I would certainly figure out how to get up here if you have any interest in doing that. If you're joining us on TikTok, I appreciate it. I don't know how many people have jumped on there. We don't typically do lives. Um, we don't typically do lives at all for a lot of different reasons. We like to structure our days so that y'all can uh, get dependable content all of the time. Please join our newsletter. It's something that really you're not going to miss any of this commentary and so forth. You're going to look for riding home on Sunday. We got everything stacked up. We'll get you Kirby. We'll get you Gunner. We'll get you Matt DeBerry. We'll get you Ryan Curley. We'll get you everybody that you need. My stuff will be Sunday morning as usual. But we'll have riding home. It will be out at about 7 or 8 o'clock at night with all of our take on the day in Athens. I think that we've entered a new paradigm. I think that that this game is not on television is strange, but it may be the new norm for a little bit of time, and we'll just see how this goes. I think that if you are Georgia, I did not anticipate that they would block this from happening, but I think Kirby, the less he can show to anyone, the better. If he didn't ever have anyone at practice at all, my suspicion is it would be that way for him, and that's his prerogative. I don't think that's necessarily the way that it should work, but that's the way that's his prerogative. But with Disney, I mean, Disney's paying Georgia $60 to $80 million a year. They're going to be doing something for Disney for all of that money. They're in Georgia right now. I'm not aware of what they're doing to make up for the fact that they're not doing a live television game or a spring special for Disney. They will probably have to make that up in the summer or the fall. So we'll just see how that goes. Here's Jimbo Sliced Bread saying Nico got $8 million before playing a single down in college football. Has been average at best, and now he's demanding more money. Who's the guy I think he is? He thinks he's the guy that's got leverage. Is who he thinks he is. That's what I would say. Is he feels like he has leverage on Tennessee, on and acutely on Tennessee, but globally on college football. And look at, man, I don't resent it. I understand this. I'm just saying that if you are him and you think that they're not going to come back at you if you don't win the Heisman, you're wrong. They're going to come back at you hard. Now the question is, so let me explain just a little bit briefly here, maybe the reason why this is happening right now. The settlement, the so-called House settlement between the NCAA, the SEC, the Big 12, Big 10, Pac-12, that has not been settled yet with the plaintiffs. So we're still in heyday. There's no restriction for money right now. As soon as that comes in, there's a hard cap at, well, we don't know what it will be, but it's going to be suggested at $20.5 million. So it's 20.5. $20,500,000 for your entire athletic department. Right now, we're in the Wild Wild West. That won't be the case soon, as far as the money is concerned. So he may be saying, "Hey, I'm going to leave unless you give me a deal right now where this year is $8 million and I'm not under the cap." So, I I mean, it's Machiavellian, no doubt, but there's always ramifications to anything we do as humans. Me sitting in this chair, there's ramifications from that. So, is that the best path if you are Nico? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he needs $16 million. I don't know. Maybe he's saying, "Hey, man, I can go out there tomorrow and rip up my knee. I don't have any sort of longevity. I don't know. I'm not him. I couldn't say, but that's what he's doing right now. He's trying to say, "Hey, look, I've got um, this moment in time where I have the power, and in the very near future, I won't have the power. This could be happening at Georgia, and we don't know it." Like Nico is not, it's not exclusive to Nico. This is not going to be the last time this happens. Okay, so that's part of what's that's part of what's going on. Yes, essentially right now what's happening is the quarterback at Tennessee is trying to get as much capital as he can until we get into a more restricted marketplace. There's a lot of confusion here. The settlement only, it does not end NIL opportunities. If Coke or Disney or Red Zone wants to sponsor Nate Frazier and give him $20 million for the 2025 season, and Dog Post wants to give Ryan Puglisi $12, we can do that. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the school money, the collective, right now we're still in the Wild Wild West. We will not be in the Wild Wild West soon. And I may be articulating it specifically not quite right, but that is basically what's going on right now is we are still in Wild Wild West. There's still the OK Saloon or whatever the term is. So we're not quite in a restrictive situation. We're completely unregulated. That won't be the case all of the time. So let's just see how this goes as things move forward. It would be, you know, Nico's situation is one that, he's got all the leverage on Tennessee. They can't just go out and get another guy. It's 6 months until they play Syracuse, so not even 6 months. So you know he's probably looking around Knoxville, saying, "Hey, uh, I'm the reason people are coming to this game." He's right. It's not just him, but he's one of the main reasons. So there's all of that. But G Day will be an exciting event, an exciting moment in the spring season at Georgia. Um, and I think that one of the reasons why we do this event, one of the reasons why we come down to Red Zone is their support through the years for us, and how much it's not just my book. Yeah, there's a bunch of books around here. If you're looking for a coffee table book, they got a slew of them about the Redcoats, about the history of Georgia. Again, the three quarter zips. They got a zillion champion sweatshirts, red, black and red, gray. The thing about Georgia, man, listen, my wife's a Clemson fan. It's hard to make Clemson colors look good. Georgia, you got a lot of options with Georgia. Silver, red, black, white. There's a lot that you can do with Georgia's colors that you cannot do with other schools. I mean, if you're Florida, I'd be rocking that orange the whole time. I would not step to the. I'd be rocking the blue the whole time. I would not step to the orange. And that's Georgia has got a lot of great stuff. So we'll just see. But look, Tennessee made their bed a long time ago. I hope that the thing, if Gunnar Stockton said, "Hey, you got to pay me up or I'm out," Georgia could say, "Hey, well, go have fun. We have another quarterback." So that's maybe where Tennessee's dilemma is right now. Is they have a quote superstar, and I'm using quotes here. They have a quote superstar running a quarterback who is plenty good enough. I mean, he could be in the Heisman conversation this year. This is not what a leader does. Not vocally. I understand it. I do. But I just this is not leadership. And I will say this in addition, I don't know what's been going on at Tennessee, so I couldn't say or shouldn't say. So maybe this is there's been unhappiness brewing and building for some time, but doesn't look great. It doesn't look great, and you know, but that's everybody's got to live in the world that they live in, and kind of figure out how they want to get through the next day. And if Nico feels like this is his last best chance, because I don't think he's an NFL starter, so this may be his chance to get to say $15 million. You get $15 million in 4 years, that will change your life. That is a significant amount of money. So I think that's the big thing. But tomorrow at G Day, let's just see what Gunnar Stockton's got. Ryan Puglisi, Justin Williams. I want to see Bo Walker and Juan Gaston. I want to see DeMello Jones. I want to see Noah Thomas. I don't think we're going to see Zachariah Branch, but we'll see. And then there's just so much positive that can come from tomorrow. You do not want anybody to get hurt, but at the same time, you want to see special teams. You're not going to have your regular punter out there. He will probably be there in the future, but he will not be there tomorrow punting. What groups are you most interested in watching tomorrow? See if it's a back receivers number. If it's a back receivers number of fans. I'm not quite sure you said that quite the right way. I am the most curious to see the offensive line. Yeah, he took it back. It's okay, Alex. Retype it. It's I'm most curious to see the offensive line, Gunnar Stockton, and explosion in theory from the wide receivers. That's what I'm most curious to see. Now, will you see that? I don't know. That's that's what you're really going to want to see is who's doing what. Is everything crisp? That's the question, and we will just see on Saturday. Now, let me add this: we will be wrapping everything up from Sanford. You'll get your first videos online about 3 o'clock, something like that, when the game is ended. I'm assuming it's going to be a game. And look for Matt immediately right out of the gate. He'll give you his thoughts because no one will have seen this. I mean, this is like reporting from the moon when Armstrong landed. I mean, Matt will be there, we will be there, y'all won't, and it's disappointing that y'all won't be able to see it, but it's good. Hey, so this yeah, overall number of fans, I would imagine it's more than 50,000. I don't know. It's a good question because I do know people this week that have bought tickets still. So there's got to be some what's the word? There's got to be some available. So let's just see how that goes. I'm most interested to see the offensive line and the wide receivers specifically. You cannot function without an offensive line. Make sure you're joining us from Athens after the game, and we will see you live. Well, live by delay after the game. Thanks for watching.